Hello taxpayers, it's October 28th, 2024. We're about a week out from the presidential election. Thought it'd be a good time to release a video mainly expressing my thoughts on the tax specific things both candidates have been saying and what's listed on their website, etc. Plenty to go into with both these candidates. Again, like I said, I'm trying to stick to tax. I'll probably bleed into money a little bit. Both candidates definitely have their positives. Both candidates, I think, definitely have negatives. I'm going to do my best to stand right down the middle. To be honest with you, I'm pretty right down the middle, like many Americans are. Now, both candidates do have history as far as being in office and presenting us with some tax-related reform. Kamala Harris has not been president, but with her party that she's been VP of with President Biden, they brought us the Inflation Reduction Act, which definitely had some positives, definitely some negatives. One of the major positives is there has been more resources devoted to IRS, so when I call them, I can get through to them. I cannot complain about that whatsoever. But on the other end of that, with more resources at IRS, there's more inquiries going on, aka audits. Donald Trump definitely shook up tax and my industry back in 2016 when he brought us his tax reform. Again, positives and negatives with that. There were many that did benefit. I would argue many that were now paying more in taxes. With that said, the last 8 years behind my desk, I have seen a vast amount of changes. Child tax credits going up, child tax credits going down, etc., etc. So I'm not going to say any candidate did a better job in lowering taxes for, many of the taxpayers that I work with. Depending on the year, there were some positives. Depending on the year, there were some negatives. Everyone's situation is different. I saw the same families see the highs and lows of each administration. So just wanted to highlight just kind of the history of both candidates. Okay, this is a really hard video for me to put out because this is a very polarizing topic. We are quite passionate about our political candidates. So I'm not trying to ruffle feathers, just trying to shed light on kind of what I see as a tax professional. On Donald Trump's website, he mentioned large tax cuts for workers and no tax on tips. Kamala Harris has much of the same message. I will find that next. But specifically tax on tips. This is excellent. I think we should provide incentives, we should provide savings for the working class, those that receive tips in the first place. So any sort of initiatives to lower workers' tax liabilities, I'm all for here. However, I want to make sure we're impartial to the industry we're talking about. Yes, people that are working for tips, they should see the benefit, but all those that are receiving similar income, they should also see a benefit elsewhere. So specifically, no tax on tips. I think it's a good idea. I just don't want to leave anyone out. So there's a thought there. One of the things we've heard Kamala Harris run on and listed on her website is cutting taxes for middle-class families, specifically providing a child tax credit of $6,000 for families with newborns. I think this is excellent. Many Americans would agree that helping new families is positive. We have seen both the Republicans in 2016 and the Democrats in 2020 work to increase the child tax credit. But I will say both administrations had ups and downs with that child tax credit. So I'd like it to be a little more consistent so families can rely on a good portion each and every year. But it's nice to see this listed with her administration. And we will see if it does come to fruition, but definitely nice to see on the Harris side of things. Donald Trump has mentioned tariffs specifically on items like foreign vehicles. Think of this as an international tax. It's very hard to argue taxing foreign goods, especially in a time where we can increase American production. I think it's also an incentive to buy American goods versus foreign goods. So these tariffs, they may be put in a light that they're going to increase the cost of these items, which they absolutely will increase the cost of these items. But the purpose of introducing these tariffs is to encourage American manufacturing and discourage Americans from buying the cheap goods that come from these other places, et cetera, et cetera. So the whole idea behind the tariff is to encourage more American manufacturing, encourage more American purchases, and that's a little bit on tariffs. Think of it as a tax on international goods. Definitely for the best interest of our country, I would argue, not in the best interest of these international companies that do production elsewhere while selling their goods here. So there's a note on tariffs. Now, Kamala Harris and her team have mentioned trying to provide incentive to new business owners, something to the tune of $50,000 administered through a tax credit. This sounds excellent. I think either Republican or Democrat, if you're getting a business off the ground, anything to help would be of value. We don't want to see businesses fail, and I think one, to encourage business owners to get something off the ground, and two, something to help sustain them while they're getting off the ground would be beneficial. So that's nice that it's listed specifically. If we will see it or not, that's hard to say, but definitely a positive I see coming from that side. Now, moving to Trump and the Republicans, I really like what I see listed here on their agenda. Chapter 4, bring back the American dream and make it affordable again for families, young people, and everyone. No one can argue that. I think both candidates truly want to provide Americans lower cost of living, a more prosperous community, et cetera, et cetera. Who's going to get us there? It's hard to say, but I want to shed light on both candidates. Definitely are discussing the American dream, making sure we can attain that, making sure we can sustain that. But definitely like to see it clearly written here on the Trump side of things. Now, side by side, I have the Trump administration with the Kamala administration. Both sides, housing affordability with Trump, Kamala Harris, make rent more affordable, home ownership more attainable. Kamala Harris specifically has mentioned a $25,000 tax incentive for new home buyers. Donald Trump mentions here lowering interest rates, encouraging other tax incentives for first-time home buyers. So looking at this, sounds like they both want the same thing. That's nice to see. I think that is extremely important here. We need people to own in this country, to take the most amount of pride in living in this country. I think the more we can encourage ownership, the more we can help get to home ownership. It's in the best interest of our country. When you ask me, when you ask many, what is the definition of attaining the American dream? I think many would agree owning a home is part of that American dream. So it's nice to see both candidates spend time on this. I think it is one of the most important things that we face. So home ownership, hopefully it's a little easier to come by in the future. I got another side-by-side up. Donald Trump, protect Social Security, strengthen Medicare. Kamala Harris, protect and strengthen Social Security and Medicare. I don't know who's the better candidate when it comes to Social Security and Medicare based off that. It sounds like they're both interested. Who's actually going to provide a stronger Social Security or Medicare? It's hard to say. If I may, though, I want to just mention working with retired individuals is quite interesting for me. A lot of these people have worked for 50, 60 years, and they're receiving retirement income, Social Security income, and yet they're still paying income tax. So kind of interesting. That's one of my gripes behind my desk. I'd like to see those that are full-on retired, those that are on fixed income and retired, those that are collecting Social Security benefits. I'd love to see tax eradicated for that population if they spent all those working years tax paying. It's just kind of odd that they're still paying taxes on retirement and Social Security income so late in life, especially those on fixed income. It's very hard to see. So just thought I'd mention that. I do truly want to see whatever party wins. I do want to see the elderly protected. They've spent a lot of years laying the infrastructure for this country. They spent a lot of years tax paying. They should receive some grace from tax paying coming to the end of their life or at the later years of their life. Wanted to mention the elderly there, those receiving Social Security and Medicare. But yeah, each website has quite similar information listed for Social Security and Medicare. Now it's great, there's a lot more attention in tax in the industry that I'm in. I like to see that there are benefits provided to Americans through my industry. I cannot argue that. But I will say it becomes hard for me to plan with my clients when tax law is different each and every year. I may be working with a family of 4 that received, a $2,000 tax credit in the prior year, but because they received another $6,000 of income, all of a sudden they start to see that $2,000 tax credit go down. So I just want to see a more consistent approach when it comes to tax for, the modern American, the everyday American. There's just too many ups and downs that I think make it all too hard to plan appropriately. Many Americans would like to, build their retirement, build their kids' college funds, things like that. But if they're seeing $5,000, $6,000, $7,000, $10,000 swings each year in taxes, that makes it very hard to plan appropriately to contribute to X, Y, or Z fund. These are swings I actually see just on the tax side of things when families have consistent years of income. But again, when they're hit with a $5,000 swing in taxes, that means there's no vacation they're not able to go on that vacation they planned for, or there's now $5,000 less to contribute to a 529 plan for their kids or a retirement plan for them through an IRA. So my whole thing with this is I'd just like to see a more consistent, approach to tax. It is nice that the government can provide us with these incentives or relief programs through tax, but it just makes it makes it much more difficult to navigate when things are changing each and every year. I've been in this industry for approaching 10 years, and I have seen way too many ups and downs for my liking. It is what it is. I cannot affect what goes on in government when it comes to tax law, but I think it would be nice if we saw a more consistent approach. Let's look at tax law for the next 10 years sort of thing, rather than adjusting each and every year, because those swings are very hard for the average American family to go through. So that's my 2 cents on, I guess, the consistency of, tax law the last few years. All right. Well, thank you for watching today. I wish you all the best in your tax-paying journey, in your voting journey. We will see what the outcome brings after Election Day. Like I said, both candidates have their strengths, both candidates have their weaknesses. When it comes to tax, I think they both have very similar ideologies and rhetoric, at least from what it appears. They want to help middle America. I guess there's a little more emphasis on the Harris administration of going after the rich, the billionaire class, and their tax paying. Trump has been a little more on saving businesses tax dollars, encouraging American manufacturing through tax incentives. So both have their strengths, both have their weaknesses. When it comes to tax, it's hard to say until they're in office, until they bring us tax law that helps us. We can only discuss. It's hard to say who will be the better candidate when it comes to tax, though. So take care. I think it's great that we can have these discussions in this country. I think many of us are quite aligned in our values, but we get quite caught up in the polarization of these elections. So red or blue, Democrat or Republican, left or right, remember, we're all Americans. We all want the best for ourselves, our families, our friends. So yeah, happy tax paying, happy voting. Take care.